Jihad said Jihad's going to be on in just a minute. So I've done political prisoner work for a little over 50 years. Became involved through working with Prairie Fire in the Bay Area, Wickle Doc for Wounded Knee, Leonard Peltier, I've known him, and many of the Jericho political prisoners. I knew them on the outside, and so maintain my responsibility to be sure that they don't get forgotten. So Veronza, Bill Dunn, and others I knew from working on the outside, being a Venceremos, and Prairie Fire for a number of years in San Francisco. Worked with Safia in the development of Jericho and have been former national board director, and now I'm on the advisory board, and former national chairperson for Leonard Peltier Offense Defense Committee.
That's wonderful. Who's next? Anne? Or, okay, here we go. Can someone just?
wanted to make sure I was unmuted first before I
Oh,
spoke.
okay.
I'm Anne, friends with Paulette, known her for a long time, very inspiring person, somewhat of a mentor to me. Been doing political prisoner work since 1973. Started out working with political prisoners in Chile after the coup. And been involved with Jericho pretty much since Jericho 98. And I am the chair of the New York City chapter of the Jericho movement. And also am on the advisory board. So very happy that this initiative is being taken and looking forward to it.
Great. Next, all I have is owner.
I'm Wendell
That's you.
Paris. I don't know how to remove that. I guess I am wishful thinking that I did own something. I have not been engaged in the work directly, other than through my dear friend, bosom buddy, Imam Jamil Al-Amin. I worked with him when before he had the name change, at H. Rap Brown, when he was chair of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. I worked Lowndes County and all of the Alabama Black Belt, basically in the Mississippi Delta, and have continued in some type of movement activities through that time. And I just think I appreciate you all allowing me to sit in with you. I'm always be indebted to H. Rap Brown for saving so many of our lives in Alabama. You know, George Wallace, I'm sure all of you remember George Wallace, but he called for killing of basically anyone involved in civil rights struggle, beginning with the documented, well, it was reported in New York Times that he called for the killing of the 4 girls in Birmingham at 16th Street Baptist Church. He also called for the killing of Jimmy Lee Jackson in Perry County, Alabama, which was where the actual Selma to Montgomery March began. It didn't start in Selma, started in Marion's. And George Wallace had Jimmy Lee Jackson killed. And he just generally was calling for our deaths throughout. But when H. Rap Brown at the time went to the state capitol and said that if you wouldn't shoot back at George Wallace, his wife Lurleen, or his son George, then you were a fool. So George Wallace then had to back off because, you know, all of the time these so-called hardcore folks, beginning with Michelle Bachmann, who said, if ballots won't, then bullets will. So a lot of the times you have to speak a language that they understand. And H. Rap Brown speaks a language that is well understood, that we ought to have the right to defend ourselves. So I'm deeply indebted to him for that. Thank you for allowing me to
Okay.
sit.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your work over so many years. Okay, and when next, let's see. Who's next?
Yeah, Maurice Allah Khan, also known in my Muslim community as El Hajj Maurice Allah Khan. I am a human rights advocate based in the Washington, D.C. area. Started out the human rights work that we have been doing for a few decades now, almost 40 years. Started out around police brutality, related issues, and segue into political imprisonment issues in the mid 90s with a case out of the Washington, D.C. area known as the Terrence Johnson case, and then weighing into support for Mumia Abu Jamal after Governor Tom Ridge signed a death warrant for him, and just continuing from there. You know, there have been so many political imprisonment cases. Brother Jihad Abdul Mumit, when he was still a political prisoner, we gave assistance to him, and you know, various others. Right now, our primary focus is on two political prisoners, not exclusively, but primary, and that is Imam Jamil Abdul Alameen, the former H. Rap Brown, and Dr. Afia Siddiqui, because we consider these two cases within the Muslim community to be, you know, of such magnitude that if we can get them free, it will have a ripple effect on many others.
Thank you. Thank you. Ursula? I mean, Ursula, can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself for a minute or so? You're muted. Okay. I don't think Ursula, I can't seem to get her attention. Julie?
Hi, I'm Julie Hewitt. I'm the chair of the Pacifica National Board. I'm on the LSB at WPFW in DC. I'm not a political prisoner activist. I know some of them are dear friends of mine. They're folks on the West Coast. And so mostly I'm here in listening mode and hoping to give moral support to, you know, this idea about the special programming that Heather's trying to put together. So that's me. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie.
Grace, I'm unmuted now. I had a little trouble unmuting my.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Ursula.
So I'm Ursula Rudenberg. I'm the Pacifica Affiliate Network Manager, and I'm just here to help. And Mr. Paris, it's very nice to see you. Last time I saw you, we were in Greenville, Mississippi.
Oh, yes.
12 years ago.
I remember that. How you doing?
Good. It's very nice to see you.
So nice to see you too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just here to help.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
That's great. Thank
I
you.
was working with Ed Brown, who set up MACE, Mississippi Action
That's
for
right.
Community
That's right.
Education. Ed
That's
is
right.
Jamil's older brother, who's passed on, but they both were very good friends of mine. So nice to see you. Thank you.
Good to see
I'm
you.
Wendell, by the way, though.
Okay,
Mr.
Wendell.
Paris is my dad.
I'm gonna jump in here for a moment, just so everybody knows. Ed Brown was also a dear friend of mine. He also was on our radio station board of directors. I want everybody to know that. But before he passed, I've probably mentioned this to a lot of you all, but he gave me the marching orders to do what I could for his brother, actually. So that's been one of my major missions. So, all right.
Wendell, is the judge still at the head of the Delta Foundation?
I can't say right
You don't
now.
know? Okay.
I know that Margaret Carey, Judge Carey, was at some point, you know, they were pushing her to try to take a more active role in that,
Okay.
especially with Owen Brooks passing away. And basically, well, Owen had left the Delta and was living here in Jackson. It's
Okay.
kind of, I haven't been in touch with him in
Okay.
recent.
I'm going to interrupt here. I guess we're going to continue introducing everybody so everybody knows who's on the call, right, Grace?
Well,
So,
yeah, while you were gone, I just figured we should utilize the
oh
time.
no, it's absolutely wonderful. So
Okay.
I guess we'll go to Vanessa. Go ahead, Vanessa. Tell us who you are.
Hey there, this is Vanessa Dixon Briggs, also from WPFW, and the labor union representative for a long, long time. I just wanted to ask the Muslim brother, please forgive me, I don't recall your name. If you
Maury?
know, brother,
Maurice Khan.
yes,
ahead.
thank you.
Go
I
ahead.
couldn't see it in small print. If you know brother Malik Farrakhan from Ceasefire, Don't Smoke the Brothers, I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yes, I do know him very well.
Okay, if you talk to him, please tell him that Vanessa says hello.
Okay, I certainly will. Vanessa, from where again?
From DC, he was very helpful with the DC General campaign, trying to save that public hospital.
Okay, great. I will.
Thank you.
All right,
You
so
are.
we'll go to Kim Kaufman. Kim, want to tell us who you are? Well, she's not unmuted, so. Who do we have from KPFTX? Otis, is that you? Who is that? Hello? Well, Grace, we're not getting everybody here. Who have
No,
I missed?
Otis doesn't talk. That's all. He's just a
Yes,
passive
you
observer.
do.
You are, let me just say that you guys are on the stream. I'm sorry that I missed the introduction. I think it's a shame that people didn't get to hear it.
Okay, that's all right. All right. So,
I want to make it a meeting, call it to order.
all right, well, we'll do that in a moment. Grace, who else do we have? Who I know everybody who has spoken already.
Jihad
let's-
Abdul Mumit.
I'm sorry?
Jihad Abdul Mumid, is he on?
Yes.
Yes,
Jihad.
I'm on.
Oh, yes, Jihad, please speak. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, sorry, it's a little late. I got picking up my daughter from night school, but yeah, my name is Jihad Abdul Mumit. I am here with my comrades Paulette Dalto and Ann Lamb from the Jericho Movement. I'm the chairperson, and I'm thanking my brother Haji Bari Salah Khan for bringing me in contact with you, Heather. And I'm looking forward to see how I can help with this initiative and bringing attention to the case of Imam Jamil Al-Amin. You know, we work with a gambit of political prisoners also, which I think was already explained as I heard. So I'm here to see how I can contribute, and ready to get to work.
Thank you so much. I'm going to thank you so much for that, Jihad. I'm so glad you're on this call. So Lakeem, I want to introduce everyone to Lakeem Winborn. He's here in Atlanta and is involved with the Imam Jamil Action Network. Lakeem, introduce yourself, please.
Peace and love all. Assalamu alaikum. Greetings. Free them all. Free the land. Lakeem Winborn Bay. I'm the local coordinator in Atlanta for the Imam Jamil Al-Amin Action Network, campaigning for Imam Jamil. I also work with the African List Health Association. I'm local chair for that organization, who is the organization that's in the lineage of Dr. Batula Shakur, another one of our political prisoners. You know, I learned from those who he taught and those who his comrades. Most immediately, I work with Heather and Brother Wendell on the black belt. What is it? The
UN decade.
UN Decade.
the Black Belt Coalition for Human Rights, and the UN declared decade work that's going on, and I've had the pleasure of working with those two, with Heather and Brother Wendell, as well as Maurice Saleh Khan, Alhaj Maurice Saleh Khan, and the brother Jihad. So it's great to be here with you all. You know, I can ramble on, but I'll leave it there and just say I'm honored to be here with everyone and to work with Pacifica Radio to help move this work forward. So I'll leave it there. And I'll say that I'm late because I just came out of a meeting around one of the children of Baba Bilal Sunni Ali Shaka Zulu, Ahmed Obafemi. He's in a critical situation, and we need your support for that as well in terms of media coverage, because he's been charged with murder. Although it was self-defense, he was defending himself, and he was attacked by several people, and shot someone, the attackers, and no one else has been charged. He was shot, a bullet that went through his heart, his lungs, and his stomach. Five or six guys jumped him. None of them were arrested. The guy that shot him was not arrested. Only Shaka Zulu. And we're clear that's political. You know, we're clear with who his family is, the revolutionary lineage and legacy that he comes from, and what he is in the public eye, and why that would even be the case. So I just wanted to say that's why I'm just getting here. I was leaving that, and there'll be a press conference in the morning, and so
Okay,
I'll
well,
leave it there.
thanks for that, Lakeem. So,
You got to meet. You got to meet.
who have we missed that, apart from Pacifica folks? Anyone?
You missed Amit.
Yeah, go ahead, please, Amit.
Hi, my name is Amit. I'm based here also in Atlanta. I moved down here from New York, where I went to law school. I'm an attorney. I do mostly criminal defense and civil rights. So I do a lot of stuff at the intersection of this work. I moved down here actually to work briefly with Project South, and Azadeh Shashahani from the National Lawyers Guild. And then I stayed down here. When I was working with Project South, I got in touch with people from the Coalition for Civil Freedoms, where I'm now a staff attorney. So we do obviously almost entirely political prisoner work. We've gotten a couple people who were serving just bogus terrorism charges, serving sentences on bogus terrorism charges out of prison. We got Amina Ali, who is a Somali woman who was accused of being a terrorist for sending charity back to Somalia. We were able to get another young man, Sami Hassoun, who was basically one of those cases. A lot of the families that CCF serves, basically it's cases where a teenager is essentially manipulated by federal agents into joining some kind of terrorist plot or quote unquote terrorist plot, and then they can turn around and say, "Aha, you're a terrorist," and so they can throw you in prison. So we were able to get him out as well, under both of those cases under kind of extenuating circumstances created by the pandemic. I'm working now with a couple of other attorneys, also through CCF, on several other cases involving terrorism prosecutions. They're not moving very quickly because we're not really sure the best strategy is, or if there is one. And then additionally, I also do, like in my civil practice, I'm trying to sue the city of Atlanta for all the people that got arrested during the George Floyd rebellion. Interesting story. If any of you know how to reach former Chief Erica Shields, she's trying to dodge service right now. She lives in Louisiana now, and she's trying to avoid my lawsuit. So if any of you guys know how to track her down, you can serve her the suits yourself. Yeah, that's kind of the work I'm involved in. I've been a long time Palestine solidarity activist. I tried to put together recently with CCF and with a few other allies, including I think some of the folks on this call, a letter calling for the Holy Land Foundation 5 to be released. Again, another kind of bogus charity being terrorism kind of prosecution that I'm sure all of you are aware of. And of course, as far as Imam Jamil Al-Amin, I attended a couple of the, as I mentioned earlier, I attended a couple of the conferences that the Imam Jamil Al-Amin Action Network put on before the pandemic, and tried to bring folks out. But I think it kind of, involvement kind of fell away during the pandemic, but I'm happy to get back involved. And I'm totally supportive in any way I can be supportive, as whether as an attorney or as an activist. And I'd also love to share with you guys, if we get the chance today, some of the cool stuff that CCF is working on that I'd love to get your guys' opinion and feedback, and hopefully your support as well. So yeah, I'll just leave it there for now.
Well, thank you so much. Now, apart from Pacifica Board folks, is there anybody else that we've missed? Anybody tell me?
I think
yeah.
if Lena, okay, there we go.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry, I'm camera's off right now. This is Lena Alarian. I'm the executive director of the Coalition for Civil Freedoms. Thank you to Brother Maurice Salakan for inviting me to this, and Heather as well. We're definitely very happy to support this effort. We're a survivor-led advocacy organization that's been supporting political prisoners who were targeted after 9/11. We see ourselves as the organization kind of bridging the crimes of the government against people of color through COINTELPRO of the past with present. The families that we represent and the political prisoners are the victims of a new COINTELPRO that has been persecuting our communities since 9/11. And, you know, to this effort, we bring hopefully our families to come out and support. And yeah, we're happy to join the discussion today.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Okay, so what I'd like to be able to do, we do want to, the primary reason for this bringing everybody together is that we at Pacifica are wanting to do a special program actually devoted to political prisoners here in the United States. But what I'd like to do also is make sure that we have Pacifica board members just quickly introducing themselves as well. So, and those who are even not on the board, actually, the secretary. Go ahead, Polina, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Heather, for inviting me. It's so wonderful to hear everybody. I'm Paulina Vasiliev. I'm a former Pacifica board member, currently the secretary. I also am a producer. I work on a Pacifica show called COVID, Race and Democracy, and we are a multi-topic public affairs show. We have actually dedicated some space to political prisoners and prisoners of war. And I've worked with we recently worked on a show for on the International Tribunal on U.S. Human rights abuses against Black, Brown, and Indigenous people, and I think Brother Jihad was part of that show. So I'm here just to support in any way I can, and I really welcome this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Polina. All right, Jim McFadden, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Jim McFadden. I'm a director from KPFA, which is San Francisco Bay Area station. And I think that's enough. I'm more interested in hearing the other people.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Fred Dodsworth.
I'm on the LSB for KPFA. I'm a retired journalist. I've worked in the prisons in San Francisco teaching creative writing. And we just published this book that you can see on the screen behind me called Colossus Freedom, which is a benefit for families of the incarcerated, and it incorporates a lot of incarcerated voices.
All right, thanks for that.
Heather,
yes.
Heather, can I please ask Sue Cohen-Johnson to mute herself because her mic is open? That's better.
Okay,
thank you. Thank you, Sue.
So Grace, introduce yourself.
I did already. My name is Grace Aaron. I'm on the local station board of KPFK Radio in Los Angeles, and I spent a number of years on the national board of Pacifica. And it's wonderful that you're all here. And I think this subject of political prisoners needs to be brought to the attention of the American public. So thank you for your work.
Thanks for that, Grace. So what other board members? I know there's probably somebody I missed. Anybody else?
Hi there, this is Sue Goodwin.
Oh, good, Sue. Go ahead.
Hi, And I am happy to be on the LSB at WPFW, where I am interim news director, sadly. And I hope to bring my many years as a radio producer to this effort. I was at NPR for over 20 years. I was executive producer of Talk of the Nation and Tell Me More with Michelle Martin and lots of other stuff. So I am bringing what I can offer and look forward to learning.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Susan. Jim Digman, introduce yourself, please.
Yes, it's a great pleasure to have all of you join us today. My name is Jim Dingman. I'm a director from WBAI Radio in New York City, and I'm going to relate two personal experiences I had from the 60s. First, I remember vividly when I first met George Sams, who people remember was associated with the New Haven Panther trial, and who later was revealed to have been a government agent. And more vividly, when I was in Vietnam Veterans Against the War, I remember William Lemmer, who was he was busted at Fort Benning, Georgia with a pound of marijuana, and CID turned him to an agent, and then he infiltrated BBAW and was the main witness in the Gainesville 8 trial. So I don't talk about these incidents too often, but they are indeed part of this history, and it's why I take this issue very seriously, and I hope we can do a bang-up job with this issue. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Jim. So who have we missed? Who has not introduced themselves? Please speak up.
Yeah, James here from WBAI.
Wonderful, Jim. Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a director, James Sagerton, director from WBAI, the treasurer of the Pacifica National Board. And I'm just, as Heather knows from my conversations with her, it always blows me away the associations she's had with historic figures. And I'm just amazed to be here now in this room with people who are working on behalf of and in support of and with some of the heroes of the movement from my time coming up. And I hope we can not just do one program, but we could possibly expand that into the future.
Yes, thanks so much. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. We should be doing a lot of programs, hopefully. Ursula, please introduce yourself as well.
I introduced myself earlier. Again, I'm Ursula Rudenberg, Pacifica Network Affiliate Coordinator, and here to help.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, who have I missed? Anyone? Okay, so let's get into this discussion. Be so clear everybody's opinion about this. What we're wanting to do.
Hey.
I'm sorry. I missed someone?
I'm Sue Cohen Johnson from KPFK. I was membership director for years and other things. And this is not the meeting that I thought I was joining, but I'll listen and learn.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So if you could mute yourself as well, I guess you did. She did. Yeah, right. Okay, so we need to hear comments from everyone about how we do this. What we'd like to do is to have a special program, as I mentioned, and we don't know when exactly, I guess in the next month or so, to do a special program across the Pacifica network. Now, just so you know, Ursula, how many affiliate stations are there to Pacifica? About how many?
About 200.
Yeah, that's what I always say 200, but okay, about 200 stations affiliated to Pacifica. So we're talking about a lot of stations in the country actually that could air programs about political prisoners. So what we would need to do is to identify individuals, and I think that all of you actually here, in this meeting tonight would be excellent to interview. So what we need to do though is figure out a date and time and how we do this exactly. So I'd appreciate hearing from Pacifica board members about this as well. What do you think? Jim, why don't you express your views here?
Well, I think this is a great idea, an important idea. It's too bad I sent out invitations to the general managers and the PDs, so we're going to have to get them into the loop. Obviously, we're talking about something, just to let the people here who are not familiar with Pacifica. Pacifica is in has pretty tough financial times. So what we're thinking of is doing this as partly a fundraiser. We can figure out how to do that, obviously, to help you guys also. And at the same time, develop other programs. I'd like to do a national program, again, soft pedal fundraiser on Roe v. Wade before the general midterms in the next month or so. But to explore how to do national programming, which we used to do a lot of, and we haven't done a lot of that lately, and this is a great subject to do it with.
Well, thanks for that, Jim. So Julie Hewitt, do you have some comments about this as well? What you think would be good for Pacifica overall? Would you like to share your views with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those topics that news-wise could, really, separate us from NPR, right? I mean, NPR is totally different. They will claim that they cover things, but this is the kind of programming that can make Pacifica unique. I do also think that, we should have interviews with both, people who are activists in the political prisoner movement. And that we might also, see if we could get some former political prisoners on the phone as well to basically, also display that there is some hope that people, kind of get sprung at some point. So, whether it's just because they've finished doing their time or what, but, but they can talk. And I think that's the sort of thing that can help, people who don't maybe know very much about political prisoners. I mean, even within the Pacifica listenership, there are going to be people who don't know much about the problem of political prisoners in the US. And so it can be eye-opening for people when they hear it for the first time. And so I'd like to, you make it really real for people when you're having interviews with people. So, I kind of like that idea.
All right, well, thanks for that. Vanessa, do you have some ideas along this line as well?
I don't think that I could say any better than Jim and Julie already have. I'm fully in support.
Okay, great. Sue Goodwin.
Yes, well, I think this is a great conversation. I've already learned things. And so as I'm listening, the question to me is, where do we feel we haven't done enough? I'd like to hear some discussion about that. How do we feel that we haven't done enough to cover this issue? And then some strategic conversation in terms of how do we cover it in an ongoing basis through existing programs, and what sort of special programming.
So I think it would be, I thank you for that, Susan. I think it'd be helpful to hear from those of you who are engaged in this whole entity of or issues surrounding political prisoners. What does the public need to know about this? Who would like to start with that? What should we be educating the public about as far as political prisoners are concerned? Who would like to start? I know that you all would. I'm sure that everybody has an opinion.
Well, this is Maurice Alakan, and I think that the very first thing that we should be emphasizing for public edification is the fact that America has political prisoners. There are still too many Americans who believe that a political imprisonment is something that happens over there in other countries, and especially in third world countries. But it doesn't happen in Western democracies. It's certainly not in the land of liberty and justice for all. So that should be, objective number one, to educate more people in the US to the reality that we have political prisoners, and these political prisoners fall under different categories. There are some that fall under the category of being political prisoners because of their politics and because of the way their politics challenges the status quo. And then there are political prisoners who fall within that category because of the open bias. It's not even covered bias anymore. It's open bias against them because they happen to be of the wrong religion, or happen to be of the wrong ideological persuasion. Or of course, race has always been a factor in the politics of imprisonment in America. So, I mean, these are, and we're in a very unique moment. I've been saying this for the past couple of years because of the pandemic and the way that it has forced people to slow down and to reflect. The pandemic, the Black Lives Matter movement, the certain strategic cases that have erupted, like George Floyd, it has really forced people who normally didn't, reflect deeply, if at all, on these issues, have forced them to do so. And it's opened a way for us to be able to do something for our political prisoners. So, and let me just say this. Something just happened here in Maryland just 2 days ago. Something just happened in Baltimore, Maryland. And in fact, Amy Goodman and Democracy Now!, they covered it today in their broadcast today. A young man, a young Muslim male of South Asian heritage, just got released from prison after 23 years. He was 17 when he was, we believe, wrongfully accused of murdering his ex-girlfriend. There are clear indications of police and prosecutorial misconduct that resulted in the second trial. The first trial was a mistrial. In the second trial, them being, able to do what they wanted to do with him. And for 23 years, this young man has been imprisoned. And just recently, I mean, just, this African-American female prosecutor, state's attorney, made the decision based upon evidence that, this man deserves to be released and given a new trial if they, after 30 days of further investigation, determine that a new trial is warranted. So, wow. And so this is, his name is Adnan Saeed. Again, you should check out the segment that Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! Did on it today. And this, I was thinking, first of all, I'm familiar with the case from way back when. And the elements that led to his release on Monday are some of the same elements that are connected to the case of the imprisonment of Imam Jamil Abdullah Al-Amin.
I knew you were going to say that, Maury.
Yes.
I could tell. But forgive me, I'm going to go on to some other folks. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that, though. I so appreciate it. Okay, Jim McFadden, go ahead. And then Paulette, I think you had your hand up as well, right? Go ahead, Jim.
I would like to hear some of the other people. I'm just going to pass. These are all important things. And I really enjoyed listening to Serial when I found out about Saeed's incarceration.
Oh, thank you, Jim. I'm sorry. I guess I was talking about Jim Dingman had his hand up. Go ahead, Jim. Thank you, Jim McFadden. Go ahead, Jim. Dingman,
yeah, no, is it El Haj Marie?
Yes.
Yeah. I think the Serial case is an excellent case to get on the air in this mix, because we all know that was at one point the most popular podcast in the United States. Serial, when it was done by This American Life in Chicago. So I think that right there, you've got a case that should be part of the mix, as well as all these other cases that are dealt with here, if we're going to do something as a one-day show. And obviously, you're talking about stuff that could be put on in other shows after that with national reach.
All right, thanks, Jim. So go ahead. Is that, how do you pronounce your name? Amit, right?
Oh, Amit, yeah.
Amit.
Is it,
go ahead,
is it
Amit.
muted?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah. I had a few things to flag. So one thing is that we have this family conference coming up. I think Lena can talk about the exact date and time, and I think for the first time, we're going to have this conference open to others. As Lena mentioned, we work directly with the family. Lena herself being the daughter of Dr. Al-Aryan, one of the first post 9/11 targets for prosecution. And I think one angle that's been totally left out is, not just the stories of the prisoners, but the stories of the families. I mean, just the other day, we had a group family call, and it was heart-wrenching to hear all of these stories from family members who have not only been struggling with the reality that their children have been reduced to political prisoners, but that other people in the Muslim community have wholly ostracized them, and which I find totally despicable. That many of the mainstream Muslim organizations and even some of the other, kind of community organizations have tried to like unperson not just the prisoners and to throw them under the bus because they aren't in some way, I don't know what the word is, like photogenic, I guess, or something like that. It doesn't because the folks that are imprisoned, said some crazy stuff, obviously, because they were angry. I mean, I can remember one, without naming any names, there's one particular case where it was a young man who was shown by an informant photos and videos of all the horrible atrocities that America and Israel have committed against Muslims. And then because including, for example, like the Abu Ghraib scandal or the killing of Mohammed Adura, the Palestinian kid in the West Bank. And basically he and other people just decided, maybe we should do something about it. Maybe we shouldn't sit down and accept it. And as a result, like those statements and those beliefs that were used wholly to entrap these prisoners have been used not only to suggest that there's something wrong with the kids for reacting normally to a form of psychological manipulation that's intended to get even people who aren't in any way predisposed to doing anything violent to sympathize with the need to do something. But on top of that, now their families have to deal with the stigma of being labeled a terrorist. And I think that's something that needs to be flagged. I think that's one thing that if you were to, folks were to come to the family conference, they would be able to hear that. One other thing I do want to say before I hand the mic to somebody else is I have to voice a dissenting perspective on this. I don't agree that the case in Serial, this Mr. Adnan, I don't claim to know all the details in his prosecution, and I don't claim to know exactly what happened or what did or didn't happen. I think maybe Lena might be able to weigh in more, but I don't think that was a case of a political prisoner, and I think there was a reason why many of the people were willing to give his case a lot of attention and a lot of, that they were willing to do things like Serial in his case, precisely because there really wasn't a very strong, Islamophobia angle or political prisoner angle. I think that was an example in our view of like exactly the problem that there are cases that are essentially apolitical or that are essentially, obviously every imprisonment is political, but like that are essentially maybe less political is the right word to use, that were being emphasized by many people in the kind of more traditional establishment part of the Muslim community that have wholly ostracized us and exiled us, and have tried to say that we're the bad prisoners because our prisoners had political views, or our prisoners supported Palestine, or our prisoners were very devout Muslims, whereas this is one of the good Muslims, and he's been railroaded because he dated women, and he was a normal kid, and he's not like one of the bad ones. So I have to push back on that perspective. I don't think, again, I'm happy that anyone's going to be released from prison, but I don't agree that his case was a good one. I think his case is an exactly kind of a reverse example of how the issue has been distorted in terms of what it looks like to have Muslims, and particularly dissident Muslims, be treated unfairly. And again, that's not, I don't want to make anything sound like I want the guy to go back into prison or anything like that, but I think that's an example of where the community has kind of missed the mark. I think Lena has probably more to say about that particular case than I would.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Thomas.
This is Lena who's next here. Lena?
Yes. Yeah. Hi, thank you. Initially I wanted to agree with Brother Maury regarding the lack of awareness in the United States that political prisoners even exist. At one point, we had a very bright young law student who went to a top-tier law school, and we were showing her our database of political prisoners, and she asked us, where did we get this, like which government, US government like agency releases the list of political prisoners in the US, and we didn't want to like laugh. But we said, well, they don't. This is our list. They don't acknowledge their existence. And we talked about our criteria in terms of how we deem an individual to be a political prisoner. And so I was going to also make the same point as Amit, that in the Adnan case, of course, as people who are interested in criminal legal, not reform, but like transforming the criminal legal system, who are interested in exposing its injustices, I don't think that for the purposes of this unique event to highlight such an entirely ignored issue of political prisoners, that is people who are prosecuted for ideology, for their political beliefs, for courageous whistleblowing, for being an ethnic minority that is has some kind of political ideology that the United States deems threatening or an enemy. And so these are the cases. That's why our cases, we say there are no victims in the sense of a traditional criminal case, except for the political prisoner themselves and the family that's devastated, utterly destroyed once that person is targeted and prosecuted and sentenced at times to life. And so for this, I would hope that with all of us here, that we would try to give attention to undercovered and underrepresented cases where innocent young men who were around Adnan's age were railroaded, were subjected to torture. One of Amit's clients was a young student who was taken out from his exam, held by the Saudis in the prison for 22 months, tortured by the Saudis into a false confession, in this ridiculous confession that he wanted to allegedly assassinate George W. Bush at the time that he was president. The family had no idea what was going on. They didn't realize until after they were pleading with the US government that it was at the behest of the FBI that he was being tortured in Saudi Arabia. This is an American born and raised young man who was interested in studying Islamic theology in Saudi Arabia, and was caught up there but tortured and then brought here. And then he was prosecuted for this based on this tortured confession, which the judge did not allow the jurors to see or to have any evidence that he was tortured, even though they got the foremost expert on torture to examine him to see body marks. The judge didn't allow any of that evidence in. He gets sentenced to 30 years in prison after he was convicted. The government doesn't think this is enough. And so they appeal to the Fourth Circuit, which comes back and demands a resentencing to life. And then he gets held under SAMS, which is the special administrative measures. It's the most restrictive, harshest prison conditions that a person could be subjected to. That's entirely tantamount to torture, where they put a gag order on him because of course they don't want to expose the crimes that they committed against him. He wasn't allowed to receive any mail for 17 years. He was kept in solitary for 17 years out at the ADX in Florence, Colorado. His family couldn't even report to anyone how he was doing. And so he was represented by CCR, the Center for Constitutional Rights, which was able to, after 17 years, remove the SAMs, but he still remains incarcerated in a prison known as the Gitmo North, a communications management unit in the US, on US soil. So these are many, many issues that Americans don't even know about, that there have been Muslim majority prisons that were built here that treat Muslims in a completely different way than any other general population prisoner, than even someone like Adnan, who was able to tell his story with his own words over the phone to Sarah Koenig, the host of Serial. None of the prisoners that we support are able to do that. And very often they're subjected to lockdowns, their communication is restricted. Even ones who are released face a lifetime of probation where they're completely prevented from doing anything or going anywhere. And these are all crimes in which not a single victim, not a single person was ever victimized by them. And oftentimes they are concocted entirely by the government. So please, if I plead for one thing, it's please let's shed light on some lesser known cases, because they are horrific and the public needs to know about them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. for
Heather,
that.
this is James.
Yes.
I hope we're recording this because that was some pretty good radio I just heard there.
Absolutely. It's being recorded.
Very good.
Absolutely. Thank you. Absolutely. All right, Paulette, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sure there are many lesser known prisoners, but I also think that given that some of the political prisoners have done anywhere from 35 to over 50 years, that there, there are political prisoners that people need to be reminded of. Whether you're talking about prisoner of war Leonard Peltier, who's now, pardon me, 48 years in prison, or Dr. Mutulu Shakur, you know, we don't just put them in the background just because we have new prisoners that come up. We have to remember that they've already done not only their sentence, but probably time and a half. And the gentleman that was talking about families, yes, Jericho movement, we have part of our journey is to make sure families visit political prisoners, that they have the money, that we're able to help them at home, and then to help bury them, as we've had 3 or 4 prisoners who have died inside. So it's very true. The families often are forgotten, and definitely needed to be reminded of. But if we look at the Imam Jamil Al-Amin, how long he's been down and that he's going blind. Dr. Mutulu Shakur, his judge, told him that he wasn't close enough to dying. So, you know, that don't come back to me until you're on your deathbed. And he's in stage 4 cancer, and he's on his deathbed, and he said, well, you're an old law prisoner. I mean, he was convicted before 1989, and therefore he's not eligible for compassionate release. So we have many political prisoners, and I am not happy to hear that we are supposed to just forget about them or put them on the back burner. I mean, there are millions, practically thousands.
Can I clarify that? Yeah, because I don't think this is Amit. I don't think Lena or I said that. Obviously, Leonard Peltier and the people that you're talking about are exactly the people we do want to defend. I think our point was people like the guy on this show, Serial. Adnan Saeed is not Leonard Peltier. Adnan Saeed is not, you know, Oscar Rivera. He's not Chelsea Manning. This guy is famous because he's not a political prisoner. That's, I think, our point, is that there are people who are getting a lot of attention precisely because they're not the kinds of people we want to defend. So, of course, amongst the people we want to defend, some people are more prestigious or more well-known than others, and that's fine. But I don't want anyone to interpret our comments to suggest that just because somebody's gotten a lot of attention that we don't want to support them or give them more attention. I think the point is some people are getting a lot of attention precisely because they aren't the kind of people that we want to shed light on. And again, I mean, CCF is itself, we've offered to provide services to Leonard Peltier ourselves, and and others as well. I mean, people like Daniel Hale, other very prominent whistleblowers. Of course, we have no problem with defending political prisoners, even when they're famous or even when they're well known. It's that some political prisoners are well known in spite of the fact that the establishment is against them, like the people that you mentioned. And there are other prisoners who are well known because the establishment really has no political problem with them at all, like the guy from this podcast.
Right. No.
So,
I was
let's just
talking
hear
about
from
the man from the podcast. I was talking about the statement that she said, you know, I agree there's many political prisoners that need to be emphasized. We used to be on WBAI every week, Sally O'Brien and Safia Bukhari, both extremely political women, had that show for years. And we organized and did a lot of work through Pacifica, Native American shows. So I don't have any problem. And I think the newer prisoners need to be brought to the forefront as long as we don't leave our other prisoners behind.
Paula, I didn't want to interrupt you, but that was a misunderstanding. I wrote in the chat immediately that wasn't what I meant. We absolutely must reconcile the political prisoners of the past and present. They should be highlighted. It was, all I meant was that it should be purely political cases that we emphasize. I have no issue with, you know, and everything that Ahmed said, I completely, yes, we support many of them, including the recent FBI whistleblower who was made into a political prisoner. So yes, we concur with everything you're saying. We don't oppose it at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Paulette. So we have another couple of hands up here. So Jihad, go ahead. Well, I guess he's not responding there. So
I'm here.
Go ahead.
I'm on my cell phone. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem.
So yeah. So once again, appreciate everyone's comments and the opportunity to present the issue of political prisoners in the United States. If we're talking about a program using Pacifica radio networks and outlets and affiliates, then I think that we want to seize the moment to really challenge and the narrative that the United States has been very successful in putting out there to the point where Americans do not view political prisoners being in the United States. We're the angelical country and pointing fingers around the world. But I think that so whoever we use as examples, Imam Jamil Alameen, of course, that would be the focus, talking about October 4. But I think that however we blend and homogenize our messaging, whoever's names who's going to put up there and who not, because there really are quite a bit of, there's quite a few political prisoners. So to leave one out, bring one in. So 2 points I want to make. One is that we want to really try to really bust a hole in the false narrative that there are no political prisoners in the United States. I was a political prisoner. I was a member of the Black Liberation Army and the Black Panther Party. I did 23 years in prison on a 43 years case for expropriating money specifically for building land. So now you have classifications of freedom fighters that you would read about in other countries and say, yeah, but when it comes to us, particularly back in the 60s and 70s and fighting, then our struggle the Black Liberation Movement struggle has been criminalized. It is simple as that. Anybody around the world historically had a right to pick up arms and fight against racism and colonialization and oppression and brutality from the state. Everybody has been saluted and hailed in history books, except for when it comes to Black people in the United States. How dare you? And the government is very successful in making sure that that narrative never surfaces. So whatever I would suggest that however we do this program, that the message would be that there are different classifications of political prisoners and prisoners of war in the United States. To be bold enough to recognize that people have challenged racism. Matter of fact, genocide, as we've already proven over and over again, the slow walk of genocide against Black, brown, and indigenous people. And normally when we talk about genocide, we're talking about the horrific slaughter of our Jewish sisters and brothers by Hitler, or maybe Bosnia-Herzegovina, or maybe the Hutus in what happened in Rwanda, where you had 1 million people slaughtered in 90 days. But when you talk about the genocide of Black people in the United States, we're talking about 400 years of this, every element that the United Nations 1948 Convention Against the Prevention of Genocide, every element, including the 18 USC 1091 here in the United States, applies to Black people. But the fact of the matter is, it's become normalized. So when you have somebody assassinated like George Floyd on TV, it's made to look like there's just a couple of bad apples. When it happens every day through police killings, mass incarcerations, long-term political prisoner and confinement, environmental racism, the health disparities, everything is intentional. It's intentional by the state. Nobody's going to call that out or fear of losing your job. Even one of the jurists that we had a panel of 9 international jurists last year at the Malcolm X Betty Spa's Culture and Education Center, same place, Audubon, where Malcolm X was assassinated. We had that tribunal. As a result of one of the jurors even sitting on that panel, she lost her job. You may lose your job. You may be ostracized. You may lose your accreditation, as it was one time before with NPR with putting Mumia Abu-Jamal's commentary on the radio back in the 90s. I was in prison when that happened. There is a cost for telling the truth in the United States. And there's a very big cost for telling the truth when it comes to historical, systemic racism against Black, Brown, and Indigenous people in the United States. There's a cost for telling the truth. We always have to dummy down, even when getting the few brothers and sisters that were able to be released. You can't even mention the fact that they were even freedom fighters. You have to talk about how old they are and how good their prison record is in order for them to even, otherwise they would definitely die in prison. We have to dummy down on our own history. And now they call it critical race theory. We can't even talk about slavery in school. And so I hope that we can, and it has to be strategic. So everybody that's in a position to make a decision about it, I respect the fact that it has to be strategic and that we just can't get, now's the time to tell everything, whatever. I understand, that we have to do this in a very wise manner, not only to get an accurate and truthful message out and to be bold enough, but to recognize that a one-time program is not going to do that. It's going to have a tremendous impact, but so I just want to make sure that we crash that narrative and that we don't forget those Black freedom fighters from the Panthers and BLA, Black Liberation Army. Are we not just talking, are we talking about criminals here? Because that's what the United States government and every professor, universe around the world would say that we're criminals. I'm a criminal. I would be viewed as a criminal, despite the fact that we're fighting specifically against racism in this country. And now you pick up a weapon and you try to carve out your own land down south. That's Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, Alabama, Louisiana. That was a reality. And to have your own flag, we have the right to self-determination. And that right is criminalized. That right, and if you can't cut it to that point where this is why this class of political prisoners are incarcerated, then we've soft-shoed this whole thing also. And we have to make a choice about that. I understand it. Either way it goes, it beats a blank. So I respect any decision that's made. Trust me on that. I'm just letting you know what the real deal is.
Thank you so much for that, Jihad. I want to tell everyone, that, and your comments were just wonderful. And I just want to tell you, normally when we have meetings, we have times, right? But I'm not doing that with this meeting because this meeting is unique, I need to say. So, and people have so much to talk about. And I do want to mention that while we're planning on having this event on October the 4th, which is Jamil Alameen's birthday, we're not just going to be focusing on Jamil. He, of course, will be one of the critical people that we'll be talking about, but this is for everyone, really. So go ahead, Jim Dingman, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Jihad. That was pretty interesting to hear.
Oh, absolutely.
And
you're welcome. I'm right here. I'm
BAI,
just blanking my screen.
And I was at BAI when the whole thing with Mumia occurred. There was everybody 100% behind putting those commentaries on the air. And I don't think we're just talking about a one-shot deal here. We're talking about doing an intelligent look at this over a period of time. Now I'm just thinking about how we structure this. Oh, somebody got to mute that. I'm just trying to think about how we structure this. Obviously, people have stressed the need to educate Americans as to the whole question of political prisoners. So probably that would be, I think, one segment, an initial segment to do if we're going to deal with this issue. And again, Paulette, I used to listen to Sally all the time, do her show for years. So I'm well aware of in New York how this issue was handled all the time. It was a major, as you know, it's a major focus of the programming at WBI in the morning show for years and the news department. So that's one thing that just comes to mind. But I'm going to shut up right now because Sue, I have her feeling her producer instincts are gelling too right now.
Go ahead, Susan. Thank you, Jim.
Well, that's funny, Jen, because I was making notes as you were talking. What's on my mind is just that we remember we are not speaking to a general audience. We are speaking to our audience. So there is, I would say, above average level of awareness and willingness to listen. And I would think people care about this issue. So I just sort of remember that as we go forward.
Well, thank you for that, Susan. So what we need to talk about actually, and I don't know if we can do this tonight because it's starting to get a little bit late. Maybe we just need to schedule another meeting as well. But we need to talk about how we're going to implement this program that we're going to have on October the 4th. So again, what we were thinking about doing was interviews with folks like all of you wonderful people here are doing this great work on political prisoners. I'd like to hear from some of the Pacifica folks about what they think we should do as far as the program is concerned. We were talking about doing interviews with people who are involved with political prisoners or I don't know. I'd like to hear from everybody. Julie, do you have some ideas on what you would like to see done or how we could do that? I don't know if she's still on there. Let's hear from you, Ursula. Do you have some ideas?
Who were you asking?
Well, I mean, this isn't really my wheelhouse. I think this is more the producers at the Pacifica stations. And so, I mean, we certainly would promote what you do. I mean, what I think the most concrete thing I can offer is that we have this show called Sprouts, which it's only a half-hour show, but it goes out to about 120 stations. So it's an automatic guarantee that the content will get heard pretty widely. And so, you know, we can, you know, we've talked about doing something on the week of on the October 4th. I think you were going to do that with Wendell, but we certainly can do more than that, you know. So, you know, what I can offer is an automatic guarantee that the content will get out and that we can, you know, make that available.
Oh, that's wonderful.
As far as planning the bigger show that you're talking about, I'm not sure that's my territory. I mean, I'm certainly willing to help in any way, but I think this is a vision that belongs more to the Pacifica producers. If I'm correct, I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, no, we're just still trying to work out what we're going to do exactly. Let me ask Grace. Grace, do you have some ideas you'd like to share as well?
I don't think I have too much to add. I think that between Paulina, you, Heather, Ursula, maybe Jim Dingman, and Sue Goodwin, certainly you can come up with a show, and then I'm sure with Ursula's help it can be gotten out to the affiliates, and it can Paulina can help distribute it to the stations that are already airing COVID, Race, and Democracy. Probably a segment from the show could be used by COVID, Race, and Democracy. Tell me if I'm on the right track.
Absolutely.
Okay, and Sue, I'm sure you can use some or all of this content somehow at WPFW.
Yeah, I mean, certainly through Monday Morning QB and then pushing it out to other programmers, letting them know this content is available. But I think, you know, Jim raised good questions in terms of when you think about a special, you know, what we basically need to do is sit down and establish the themes. What do we want to establish over 2 to 3 hours? I don't know if you're thinking a whole day or 2 to 3 hours, but I agree with Jim too. We also need to be thinking what goes beyond that. What's the regular programming? But that's, I think, a later discussion.
I think one very concrete suggestion I would have is for everybody who's interested in being interviewed to put their contact information in the chat. I think we can save the chat, and the how
I'm
to
gonna
read.
interrupt. Should someone start a Google Doc or something like that where we're collecting resources and context?
You
We
know,
could do that as well. I'm sorry, go ahead, Greg.
I think if it's put in the chat and somebody saves the chat, that can be harvested. And if everybody who wants to be interviewed, who has a good story, who wants to bring light to political prisoners in the U.S. and is willing to be interviewed, can put their contact information and their availability, like if they're available in the morning or in the evening, what time, what time zone, that would be really helpful. And then Ursula could put out a press release or an internal memo to Pacifica producers who might want to interview anyone in this community who would be willing to be interviewed.
All right,
And a little bit of a little tiny bit of bio, what group you're interested in. Does that make sense? So that we have like a little Rolodex for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I witnessed tonight, at least in this meeting now, is that there are some people who are prepared immediately to speak very intelligently about the topic, and I'm sure there's other people as well. And I mean, I see the outline. I mean, what I heard tonight was already 6 topics, each which could be a show. Political, talking about the fact that political prisoners exist in the U.S., families of prisoners, the little known prisoners, elderly prisoners, prisoners who have already died in prison and what has happened to them, and just the danger of talking about this and the actions of the American government against people that speak. But these are all, these are 6 shows already, and we have people who can speak about it. So, and I'm sure there's much more. So, I mean, Heather, I think, what's important is that you find that, that you have a producer, whether that's you or somebody else, who begins to, schedule this. And I think, from what I heard tonight, the show will pretty much write itself if you, if you open up the floor.
Agreed.
Heather, try jumping on this.
So I don't know, Sue, is your hand is still up. Did you want to say something? I guess not. Go ahead, Jim.
No, I forgot to
No problem. No
undo
problem.
that.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Jim.
All right. Well, first of all, it has to be a must carry. So it has to be dealt with at the national level to be a must carry. Secondly, there was some significance with the H. Rap Brown. I don't know his Muslim name. I do apologize.
Jamil El-Amin.
Jamil El-Amin. Okay. Is there some significance with October 4th relating to his particular? Is that his birthday?
No, that's his birthday. That's why.
Okay.
So we're doing something in Atlanta as well.
Oh, okay. Well, obviously, if you structure it, you figure that you would start. I'm not talking about New York's schedule. This is why you got to get Linda involved. You start after Democracy Now! Plays at 8 o'clock, and maybe you pick a day where the morning show, which is what, again, I'm talking about New York now, between 7 and 8 o'clock, you ask that particular show before Democracy Now! To handle this issue. Maybe have 1 or 2 of these folks on, and then have a half hour of phone calls, open up the phones to the public. And then you have Democracy Now! That ends at 9 o'clock. Then from 9 to 12, you have organized in their segments, which include phone calls coming in from people. Then you finish, I'm thinking about where we're going to make money during the day when we're raising money. And then from 12 to 1 or 1 to 2, you can decide if you want to, you let Noel do his thing, and then maybe Lenny Lopate. But you could actually ask Lenny to devote his show to political prisoners, and then stretch it out into the afternoon and ask some of the strip show hosts that are coming in there if they want to deal with it. Or you just set up a completely different kind of thing. So that's one structuring of it. Whether you go into the evening or not is another issue. All throughout the day, you have to have a little light fundraising touch to it. because each of these stations need to raise a couple $1,000 a day. Now, in terms of actualities, I would think that that's where you could get some interesting stuff because you've got all sorts of pre-recorded comments. You probably get news segments that you could bring up from the past that could be used to introduce interstitials in how you produce something like this. And at the same time, there must be stuff on the internet of these latest cases that some of these folks were just talking about, stuff that broke out in the past 10 or 15 years. Someone would have to do the archival research on that to get little clips that have to do with the kind of cases that Lena's talking about and Amit is talking about. And frankly, as I said, this is just not a one-shot deal. One can return to this and explore it in greater detail another time, maybe a couple of weeks or months later. But I'm just thinking about how practically it would take, because then, of course, you want the public to call up and ask questions. And I don't want to, and sometimes you have this, and you're right, Susan was right. This is sort of like aimed at our niche audiences. So they respond to this stuff. There's, in the case of New York, the case of Washington, and other parts of the country. I would put in any kind of Latin prisoners as well, along with Muslim prisoners, because all the stations in different markets have large Latin audiences. But again, we want Joe Schmo driving in the street who's turning into his radio that day in his car to say, oh, wow, what's this? And so that's why it has to have a lot of production values thrown into it to make it interesting. And the call-ins is essential because people want to vent about this. I've watched people do these kind of shows for years in New York. And every time, it's too bad Sharon is around here tonight, Sharon Salam, who's one of the Central Park 5 moms, because she'd have a lot of ideas about this. I would suggest maybe we bring her in next time we're talking about this, or Ralph Pointer and Betty, and there's all sorts of ways to skin a cat on this issue. It's such a very rich issue. Everything everybody has said here has been brilliant, all the folks coming from all these different organizations. We just have to, and we have to get the buy-in from producers locally. That's for damn sure. We've got to get producers, and there are shows at every station that deal with these kind of issues. So, whether the stations will take a must-carry, and for those of you, a must-carry means they have to play it. And so I prefer to do that. I prefer to vote at the PNB and say, you got to do this stuff, guys, because it is important politically. It differentiates us from other stations. No one else in the country is going to do anything like this. So that's sort of my initial thoughts. Again, I'm thinking about how you structure it and how you make it interesting, and just don't simply, talking heads. You want to get it intermingled with, actualities, realities, interstitials that make it interesting. Songs. What songs come out of this? I mean, I think of, a Dylan song, but there's all sorts of songs that come into the music. Music should be part of it too. Anyway, those are just some thoughts as I'm thinking about this. I'm done, Heather.
Yeah, this is Lakeem. I just wanted to add that I agree with all that. A big highlighting Imam Jamil and a big focus on elder and Asian prisoners and all of those political prisoners, newer and in between, should get some shine. I like the idea of 6 different shows. What's there for me is also how are we going to how is, or not we, but how is the fundraising piece of it going to be tied in with the programming, and how like I agree with the comment of like having like a must air, or how are we gonna assure that it gets circulated as much as possible, and so those are like, I guess, comments and questions that show up for me. But I think that it's a great jump off on October 4th, and yes, it's to me should be a spark for a segment or shows that run frequently, every week, every month, every whatever, on the different outlets and so forth. So I think Pacifica has a great opportunity to shed a lot of light on in the dark. There's the vast majority of Americans have no idea. The vast majority of people in America have no idea, and on the planet. And so this is a way to really lead that push, and with this jump off and some consistency, I think it will be impactful.
To educate the public.
It would be, to me, it would be impactful, and people participating in these campaigns and really pushing the envelope, making a difference. Somebody's going to get freed from this if we do it right.
Okay.
So I yield.
Well, thank you, Lakeem. Okay, Jim McFadden, go ahead.
Thanks. This has been great. I want to say something about just coming from a listener perspective. So I don't want to deal with the technical parts, but from a listener perspective, we want to catch people who are maybe driving to work or walking to the store. They might listen to a podcast or something that can be turned into a podcast later on for people to download. And I guess when I think about it, what I'd like to see is something is a lot of individual story. There's so many compelling stories out there. I'd like to hear them. And I don't know if it's possible to tell the story in a compelling way in 15 or 20 minutes, but I think I heard some tonight that were about that time scale. And that gives a listener a chance to finish through the whole thing. And then at the break, either the break is going to involve some kind of music that's inspirational, or it's going to involve some kind of pitch. This is your chance to help these people, help Pacifica, and so on. And so I think if it can be organized that way, the stories can be written and produced to make a very compelling and compact story. And then intermixed in those stories for the day, to have an expert like we have here to come on and to be able to answer questions, online, or to have an interaction amongst themselves that tells us even more, the big story, But I think those individual stories, as many as possible, and that can be an ongoing thing that goes on, for as long until we get some kind of justice on this. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
Can I weigh in for a moment before the folks from different parts of the country start leaving?
They're not leaving yet. I'm going to come to you in just a minute.
Okay.
Okay. So, Jim, thank you so much. Grace, you had some comments you wanted to make?
I'll wait. Take me next.
Well, let me see. Lena wanted to say something as well. Lena?
Hi, yeah, thank you. I completely wanted to concur with the idea of doing this almost as episodic, having the event on the 4th primarily highlight Imam Jamil and whatever other issues that you all want to raise there. But we as an organization have been trying, and we attempted, our very low tech attempt at creating a podcast to highlight, just do short episodes highlighting a different case each week or whatever, we were unable to successfully do that. We have the stories, we have the research, we don't have the technical expertise as Pacifica does. And so if that's ever anything that interests you, we would absolutely be thrilled to be able to share in that. We've done webinars, dozens of webinars talking about different cases, including Imam Jamil's. We've worked with Brother Mori on a couple of them. So, and again, it's just simply political prisoners in America. That's enough to just kind of be a topic where you can go in any direction. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Lena. Okay, Jim McFadden. Is he here?
I just spoke.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My apologies.
I didn't lower my hand.
I'm sorry. It was Maury. I'm sorry. Sorry, Jim. Go ahead, Maury.
Okay, I just wanted to say this as a final statement from me. I think it's good. First of all, I want to thank everyone for being on this, and whoever came up with the idea for having such a meeting. I really applaud you and I thank you. And I'm happy that there are so many folks that are connected to Pacifica Radio in different parts of the country on this meeting. because, you know, this radio is still a very powerful medium. And especially, you know, a station, or I should say, an organization like Pacifica, with the history that it has. Imam Jamil Al-Amin, and I'm glad that you're planning to do what you're planning to do in Atlanta on October 4th. Heather, Imam Jamil represents, and I've said this many, many times over the past few years, he represents a very important and strategic bridge between generations of political prisoners. The Motula Shakurs, the Leonard Peltiers, the Mumia Abu Jamals, you know, he represents those that emanate from the struggle of the 60s and 70s on into the 80s. And he also represents this new generation of political prisoners that were minted after the tragedy of 9/11. All right, he's that critical bridge between two generations of political prisoners, and this makes him, aside from the pedigree of struggle that he represented as H. Rap Brown, this makes him a very, very important and strategic figure in this struggle to get our political prisoners free, and to raise the awareness among the American people that America has political prisoners. That's number one. Number two, we are planning two very important mobilizations. And so if there are any stations within the Pacifica network that would like to help us with these, by doing one or more interviews, whether it's a national interview or local interviews with a number of stations, we're planning to do two major mobilizations. One in October 23rd, for one of the most important, or what I should say, one of the most prominent international political prisoners in the world today. That's Dr. Afia Siddiqui out of Pakistan. You know, she's imprisoned right here in Fort Worth, Texas. We're having a rally outside that military base where she's being held on Sunday, October 23rd. And then the second mobilization is going to take place in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., for all of our political prisoners, to shed light on all of them. And that's going to be in November. We haven't set an exact date yet, but it's going to be in November. So if we can get some airtime to be able to talk about these two mobilizations, it would be a big help to us. And I also believe it would be a tremendous benefit to the listenership of Pacifica Radio.
Well, thank you so much, Maury. You know, that actually, Maury saying that, and I'm going to go to other people who have their hands up. I just need to say to all of you who are involved with political prisoners, what we would appreciate, I think we just need to set this up. It would be great if you would share with us some ideas of other programs after we do the October the 4th one, but ongoing interviews that need to be done, right? So I'm going to be in touch with all of you about that as well. Grace, go ahead.
Yes, I see in the chat that many of you have put your contact information in the chat. That's wonderful. I took screenshots of it in case the chat gets lost, but I hope that that chat will be preserved. I'd also like to say personally, I have not been active in the this movement that you're talking about, but many years ago, my brother-in-law, who's died, was a prison guard in Rikers Island, New York. And he visited me in Los Angeles, my husband and I in Los Angeles, and talked to us about how grim it was there. That every morning they would cut down prisoners who had hung themselves during the night. Wow. He never ate inside the prison. He was very fearful. You know, the life in prison is horrible. I think that the details of what it's like and the spiritual fortitude of prisoners in general and political prisoners especially should be talked about so that people understand that there is a great mental and spiritual courage and fortitude on the part of political prisoners especially. And another subject I'd like touched on, if possible, is the possibility of success after prison. Relative of mine has a very good friend who owns a very prosperous and large restaurant in Lower Manhattan, right on the waterfront, and he hires ex-convicts. He considers that that's been his success in hiring people who have gotten out of prison to give them a chance. And he spoke very highly of doing that. And so I'd like somebody to talk about success for people who are able to get out of prison and how the community has helped them or not helped them for that matter. And I would be highly interested in that. And maybe other people would as well. The other thing that I'd like to touch on is anyone talking about incarceration in mental institutions? Because I think it's much easier to, maybe not that much easier, but it may be easier in some respects to get somebody incarcerated in a mental institution with less political prisoners, with less due process. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's something I've heard. So these are all subjects that I think would be of high interest. I don't know if this is in your bailiwick at all, but I'm just putting it out there.
Okay, thanks, Grace. So we have Jim and then Lakeem, I think. Go ahead, Jim Dingman.
All right. Well, one thing I'm thinking about is the whole emphasis on storytelling, because one thing suggested by various folks here was the stories they have, the personal stories, which are very effective. And anybody who goes to contemporary journalism schools these days, that's all they talk about is the need to have storytelling. So that's one thing. How can we get these stories crafted in a way that can be, I would simply say, turned into podcasts initially or analog? Now, another question becomes, how do we configure this on the websites of the stations? I personally think that we should begin thinking about a new way to conceive of the stations, and that is include digital technology products like podcasts. So, for example, with all the different stories here, there could be a project set up. I would bet you we could get some funding from some place that would allow skilled podcast producers, and a podcast is essentially a good radio show, to go in and knock out some of these different folks that they have, and particularly the family stories. That's very important. People want to know what it feels like to go through these shitty experiences. They want to know that for real. Another thing is, I'm thinking of the international aspects of it. I know somebody who teaches at Columbia Law School who actually, his specialty is he represents political prisoners who are in capital cases around the world. His name is Bernard Harcourt. And I would actually bring him into the mix, because Bernard, this is what he does. He goes and saves people from being executed in different situations around the world. And finally, the podcast question is something I think institutionally as an organization we have to keep. Yes, Harcourt is brilliant. Yes, Lena knows him. He is brilliant. What would be interesting in this situation is to use this as an opportunity to, do what I've always wanted to do, is have a democratic teaching process about doing podcasts. So we have a situation, because, there's an art form to it, and it can be taught, but this would be, to me, a particularly interesting way to introduce the subject. Bring in these folks who are doing these different kind of programs that have to do with political prisoners, and figure out some way to have them taught how to do podcasting, which is, again, not rocket science. It's not that hard to learn, but I think that that'd be interesting, so they could themselves internally express their own stories. They don't have to wait for Pacifica to do it. They can do it themselves.
That's a good point.
And finally, the marketing of it. The marketing of it is very important. How do we market this out? How do we get a mass effect? not just speaking to the same old, but how we get a mass effect on this. And the last thing that pops in my mind is, how are we going to deal with this January 6th issue? Because, I have a former boss who went down to Washington on January 6th. Someone cracked me up. He said, guess who showed up there? And there's this guy who used to be on the left who's down there in Washington. And I have a different attitude towards those guys, obviously. But I think it'd be interesting to reach out to the conservative movement and say, hey, what do you guys think about it's sort of something along the lines of, let's reach out to our foes and talk to them about stuff. Because I'll be goddamned if I want a civil war in 10 years. I'll tell you that much. So, I really, we're already in a civil war as it is, but I don't want to see it get worse.
All
But
right.
anyway, those are just some thoughts I throw out, just because of, and Lena knows Bernard, and that's great. And I will actually talk to Bernard about this myself. Thanks.
All right. Thanks so much, Jim. Lakeem, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, just a few quick points. Pardon, yeah, I just turned my camera back off. One, in terms of like promoting it, support, support the media that, supports the truth, that supports the stories that you don't hear, the things that are untold. Support the outlets that that tell us what's being hidden from us. I think something in that vein, is important in terms of like, the whole fundraising, where Pacifica and these campaigns can be supported, and that like, this is news you're not going to get anywhere, and it's worth supporting monetarily, and the hope is that it will spread to being shared in other outlets. But in cases like Imam Jamil's, there's been a couple of sprinkles of coverage more recently, and a gag on him, and no coverage for 2 decades, generally speaking. And like right now the push in his campaign is to get CNN to air the video confession, and this is something that Pacifica can kind of work on in terms of like beating to the punch and highlighting that this is the media for the people and so forth. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Well, thank you so much for that. Some good ideas, Lakeem. Thank you. So everyone, I think that we're almost.
Can I just say something? The person that talked about working with international political prisoners, I think one of the things we have to realize is the role the United States plays in keeping political prisoners in prison in other countries. And one of the most famous is George Ibrahim, who is in a French prison, who is a Lebanese freedom fighter and supporter of Palestine, and has been there almost 40 some years. And every time he has come up for the parole, a Secretary of State of the United States has written to the President of France saying, we don't feel that it's in the interest of the world to allow this man to have parole. And Hillary was one of the last secretaries of state that I know of to do this. Same way with the Basque political prisoners. The US government has on many times told Spain, do not let these people out. We don't want their influence to creep around the world. So people need to understand the role that the US government plays in keeping international political prisoners locked down in their own countries. And
Wow.
Simon Trinidad, yes. I mean, he's in Florence, Colorado, and he was supposed to have been one of the negotiators for the FARC. So, and he just actually won a hearing where he is now able to get mail. So you can see the role the US government plays in maintaining their colonial, racist, Nazi views that political prisoners throughout the world are a danger to their empire.
Oh my goodness, Paulette. Well, thank you so much for that. I don't know how I can adequately express my appreciation to all of you who have been on this call today and have shared so much. You're educating all of us, I think. This needs to be ongoing. We're going to figure out how we can do that. But we will also, on the Pacifica board, we'll make decisions on how we're going to move forward on this program. And we'll be back in touch with all of you. I'm going to be communicating with all of you. So that, I think that's all I can say right now, except to express my appreciation, not only for educating us, but for the great work you do. Wendell, did you want to say something?
No. I was trying to make sure folks saw that put a little something in the chat there, and
Okay.
any ways that I can be
Heather?
helpful there, you know.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry if I interrupted. I have just copied the different contact information in the chat.
Wonderful.
And I'm going to very briefly summarize this meeting and send the contact information out to the people in this committee, as much as if I can think of everyone. And I'm also sending it to Margaret Prescott at KPFK. She has a primetime show in the morning. And also to Sonali Kolhatkar, who has a show. Siri Rideau, who's at our station, who's thinking about is working on a news show, and Ann Garrison, and also Egberto Willies.
Right.
And so I'm going to send this to all of you, and with the contact information and a short. When is we're targeting the show for October 4th, right?
October the 4th, right? Exactly.
So I'm going to put your contact, at least your name and email address in here as well, Heather, so that people can
that's
contact.
good. Absolutely.
Okay.
Right,
And so
exactly.
I'll have this out in a short time, a few minutes.
Wonderful.
I'm sure nobody will object to my sending out their contact information to this list.
No, and could I add something before we go, Heather? I want to
Okay.
make sure that next time we meet, we implement. I want to get implemented because I know we have always these brilliant people to talk, but I want to get some stuff in gear, so we actually get something done and get it in motion, and definitely bring in the GMs and PDs on this one, and they didn't come tonight, but I would definitely want to make sure they come the next time.
So I'll be back in touch with everyone because I'd like to have another meeting like within the next few days or whatever. I'll figure it out. Thanks for that, Jim. So everyone, I don't know how to adequately express my appreciation for all of you coming to this meeting and for sharing so much and for educating us all. And thanks for your great work. So I guess we're finishing this, but so I hate to do that actually, but thank you so much, everyone. So take care now. We'll be back in touch. Okay. All
What's
right.
the call? Free them all.
Thanks, everyone.
Free them all.
Thank you all for allowing me to say it.
Right, free them all.
Thank you so much, Heather.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Take
Thank
care
you.
now.
Don't
Good
forget to
night.
save the chat.